Much, Dr. Jordan. So we're going to move on to the next speaker because of time, and I think we'll have questions just now at the end of that. Dr. Mvuyiso Talatala is next. It's on page 27, his bio. He's a friend of mine, and he's just started as the new head of Department of Psychiatry at the biggest hospital in South Africa, at Chris Hospital in Soweto. So we're quite excited to have you talk.
Thanks, Mona. I think my task is a bit easier because I thought Michelle was going to introduce me, which was going to be a problem to explain. I'm going to explain to you. That's my time you're taking. Yeah, but I'm going to continue because my time has already started. I'm saying that I thought I was going to difficult explaining this to Michelle because I'm not sure if she watches athletics and relay races. You know, there's 100 meters, 100, and there's relay. So one can be tempted as well to think that Mvuyiso Talatala said it's a relay, and the time which they should finish at 10 to 3, 14:50. And therefore, because I'm the last runner in the relay, I only have 30 minutes. No, it's not going to happen like that. I'm going to have my 25 minutes, just like everyone else. We will not delay the time we finish dinner. You can postpone the dinner, start time of the dinner, and finish dinner a bit later. Call the people going to move us. Thanks really for organizing this and inviting me, Bonga and Dave and insisting that I must come because I didn't want to come and this talk. Not that I don't want to support, I've supported before, but starting a new job on the 1st of September and moving to the public service, I don't want my bosses there in government to think that I'm bringing bad behavior from the private sector to the state sector, so I wanted to behave. Anyway, I'm going to talk to you. That's the title. I said, come up with the title today, before tonight. You must WhatsApp it to me. So I WhatsApp that title, where I'm looking at how we can use the law to fight for mental health care in South Africa, in Africa, and the world. Yes. I am talking from a point of view of, I'm not an expert, let me send a disclaimer first. It's lived experience. So I've done mental health advocacy through my own experience. If you're in South Africa, you want to fight for your patients or mental health care or human rights, you've got options, and I'm quite experienced in most of them. You can go for mass action, carry placards. One of our partners even has crosses to show the deaths that the government has caused. So you can do that. You must involve families. I think it's important if it's in mental health care. Otherwise, who's going to speak for our patients, especially those with severe mental illness? And if you are talking from a point of view of a psychiatrist, it appears as if you just want, especially me as a practice psychiatrist, I just want more money so that I can make more profit out of illness. So you can be viewed that way. Or we are controlled by CIA or any of the foreign people can control people in South Africa. And that's not psychotic. The other one that I learned through my journey of being a psychiatrist is use of media. I'm just mentioning these ones because I don't want to talk about them, but one day maybe Boga will invite me again. Use of media is another interesting one we've never tapped on, but and I'm not in social media that much, but it's quite powerful, both social media as well as print and television, and it has worked wonderful for us. I don't do it all the time, but I've convinced our Society of Psychiatrists to actually put an effort in media. But the one we're going to talk about today is law and adjudication. I can get to learn this. Okay, excellent. So you are going to be confused by my talk, unless you pay attention, even more attention than the talk before mine. Because I'm going to bring 3 elements in one, and I'm going to do this in 15 minutes and I'll be done. One, I want to give you a brief overview of the elements of law that we can explore. But I also want to give you my personal journey and history in mental health advocacy, including that of our Society of Psychiatrists. But I want to do this using an example. So I'm going to get you to understand this example because I'm doing all of this. So more attention and speed. Naturally, I speak fast, so I'll probably finish quite in time. That's what I'm going to do. Oh, actually, I'm disappointing my afternoon team. You know, they had this quite correct compared to the morning team. I should be good in the morning. I read newspapers, I read history, I like it. Unlike all of you, even in grade 12, I did history and I passed it rather than mathematics and science. So that helps me to remember events that have happened in our country. So even when I take up on things now, I tend to reflect back. And that was early 2000, during the AIDS denialism in South Africa. The cartoon is by Zapiro. I'm sure he signed himself. I think I paid it. Oh, he should have signed himself. But it was during the time of AIDS denialism. That is Mandela. That he was no longer the president at the time. That is Thabo Mbeki, he was the president of the country at the time. That's the Minister of Health. The Long Walk to Freedom, not Free Israel, it's a book he wrote. And those are the graves of HIV people who were dying at the time. And I think, I didn't look at the date of this cartoon, but I remember Mandela, when he was no longer the president, and his son was sick of HIV, and he was saying, I'm going to go and speak with the president, to get the president to start looking after HIV. But what also followed after that was that the communities formed treatment action campaign, and the government was taken to court many times, and that's how we got HIV treatment after the estimate 350,000 people died of HIV because they were not treated. So that is the journey of HIV, and those are the people that we can learn from in mental health in South Africa. So one element of adjudication I want us to look at and explore. Adjudication, judges, courts, they've got all those good things: impartiality, consistency, predictability, etc. It's a law, but there's another element that is not listed there. The fact that it's a public forum where views can be expressed and where you can actually use the platform to campaign and get more people involved in mental health. So it doesn't matter, to South Africans know that I've lost some of the cases, it doesn't matter that you may lose the case, but people would have listened to the actual case itself. It doesn't matter how it's adjudicated, because maybe you may lose on legal grounds, but the other mental health advocacy issues would have been shared with the public. So moving to how we've played the game from our side, we had the social contract, we formed the Mental Health Alliance, and that's my example, the life assisting me. I'm going to move quite fast. We can't talk about the social contract without remembering Professor Janssen van Rensburg, former president of SASO, passed away in 2020, who used to teach us about the social contract, but he also, him and myself, we actually prepared ourselves for this. We made stakeholders, that's one of the meetings that we had, that was 2015, as if we knew that trouble was still coming in South Africa. We actually, after meeting multiple stakeholders and moving fast, we actually formed the Mental Health Alliance, which now is composed of the South African Society of Psychiatrists, plus patient groups. The Section 27 is a legal group that helps us. Then, after we'd done all of that work, came the life testimony, where a lot of patients, in fact, maybe a bit of background if I still have a few minutes, that in South Africa there's public mental health care system and private, but we still institutionalize patients. That's a matter for another debate for next year, when the next AGM. And some of the patients were kept in private facilities, which the state paid for, but one day, all of a sudden they cancelled the contract, so the patients were moved to non-existent NGOs, and there were about 2,000 patients, and 144 of them died soon. But we used the legal adjudication to advocate for in that, and we use that quite resourcefully, even though there were losses. I think this is us there. In fact, if you prepare for the court now, I'm not talking to psychiatrists, I'm talking to legal people. If you're preparing for the court, you need to have things written down. So okay, I'll speak better of the government, and I'll run better. They will not, they know that's not a problem. So they're not going to come to you and call you for a meeting and say, we're going to do this so that we can engage with them. You're going to hear a rumor. So even if you hear a rumor, write to them and say, we've heard this rumor. See if they're going to respond, how they're going to respond. That's what we did there. We wrote to them. Not only did we write as the Society of Psychiatrists, our clinical case, Gauteng. This is all happening, by the way, not in Western Cape. Don't look at them badly. It's in Gauteng, the smallest province, but the richest and the most populous province. That's why we had so many patients in institutional care. I think at the time we were around 12, 13 million people in that province only. So even our clinical heads of units, they wrote to the government. Obviously, they will not listen to us because the decision was already made for no reason. So the MEC of Health announced that they will terminate the contract. That was October 2015. She even released it for the media. So what did we do after hearing this? We went back to our partners in the Mental Health Alliance, the ones I spoke about quite fast. And we then thought that we'll approach the court and get the court to interdict the discharge of patients so that we could find a solution to. We didn't want to appear like we want to keep the institution because it's a private institution. We want to keep patients there, but we wanted to find a reasonable way, maybe longer period of time, not the 2 or 3 months they wanted to charge patients on. So we went to court, and the Society of Psychiatry was one of the applicants. But on the day of the court, the government opted for an out-of-court settlement. Obviously, they realized that we are going to win the case. We were going to interdict them. But we also a bit, it would be difficult to disagree with an out-of-court settlement if the person we are fighting with is suggesting that. So we went for the out-of-court settlement, which of course they didn't do anything they agreed on. Until in March the following year, 2015, we heard that they were actually moving the first patients, 50 patients, to one facility, which was for children with intellectual disability, moving adults to that institution. And that's when we went to court. And unfortunately, we lost that court case. We could not interdict their discharge all that time. On technicality, I'll discuss next year again. But but we did lose the case. So then they started discharging the patients over the few months. I think that was the cartoon in September. We were already aware that many of these patients had died. But obviously, when the MEC was asked in the legislation how many people had died, she said there were 36, which was a lot even at the time by any standard. And of course, this was 2016, and in 2012, you remember that people had been killed in Maragana when they were fighting for salary of 12,500. And it's the same cartoonist. I like looking at these cartoons. That's why he was saying that we have made our second Maragana. So in total, over the 6 months, we had 144 patients who died in those facilities. We expected it because they were moved to. Even I cannot look after 10 patients in my house even though I'm a psychiatrist. It's worse if someone who has no medical training, because these are like severely ill patients. Then after they had died, then with the media pressure, then the National Minister of Health, there's provincial, the one who discharged, the responsibility of health falls within the province. So the MEC is the one who discharged because it was her responsibility. But the national government is responsible for policies and those kind of things, and it's the same political party. So it's not that he was not aware, but he opted not to act, the national minister at the time. But eventually, when people were dying, he then acted. and got the health ombudsman to investigate, and he did investigate, and even there, which is my office of this talk, we didn't leave it to the ombudsman. I mean, he phoned me, we got psychiatrists to participate in his investigation, and he came up with a report, and then the report had certain recommendations that the patient must be moved back to a hospital at least, because life with was not prepared to just open overnight. But also he recommended some kind of an arbitration process, sort of to protect the government from litigation, because I mean, each family could sue the government for 10 million and they could have been stuck in legal problems. So he had an out-of-court form of arbitration, which he recommended, which other psychiatrists participated, and it was chaired by Judge Musenege at the front. This is the person who was in charge of mental health at the time. Of course, that is me using the system. I was not even familiar with those files in court, but those lawyers' files, but I was going through them. But we used the process which he thanked us. We used the process to explain, I mean, the challenges of mental health, which the Judge Musenege actually put in his report and his findings. He made his further findings, but he also, I think SIM or the Health Ombudsman asked the Human Rights Commission to further investigate the mental health in South Africa. And the Human Rights Commission has released a 2018 report with great findings that we still need to wake up and push the government to implement them, because they will take our mental health services in South Africa further if they are implemented. Of course, the government received the report, they hide it. We still need to go and put pressure on them. And you know, someone else said I mustn't put pressure on them, I'm employed by them now. No, we'll still put pressure on them. And the last one, and very much on time, the last one has been the inquest itself. So if I take it back, so when they discharged the patient, there was a health ombudsman who was required to investigate circumstances. He then put the patients back in hospital. Some of them I still look after them. But he also recommended some kind of arbitration, and there was a form of compensation to the affected families and patients. But there was also a recommendation that the Human Rights Commission must investigate, which Professor Hansfeld van Rensburg participated in, and Leslie Robertson, which is also helpful if you have psychiatrists participating in those processes. There was also a recommendation that there should be an inquiry. In fact, this was not from the investigation. Because there was the president appointed SIU, Special Investigation Unit, to investigate, to see if there was no corruption in this matter, which I don't think they found anything, but they moved the case to the National Prosecuting Authority. It's a complicated story, so the NPA did not want to charge anyone. They then opted that there must be an inquest to determine if there's anyone who was criminal liable. I spent 5 days, I think in April, at the inquest, because there are many people who are liable, who are potentially liable. It's the MEC officer, it's someone who was the head of health, it's the lady who was responsible for mental health, it's the NGOs that took patients, it's also potentially life is the many itself. So there's many people who are potentially liable. So when I went through that inquest as a witness, expert witness, you have to then be asked questions by all these lawyers. But the beauty of it, you're answering questions that will educate that will increase awareness about mental illness. I am not even, my heart has changed now. It's how many years since 2016? I'm no longer even looking forward to them, the MEC, the head of health, and the lady who was in charge of mental health. I'm not looking forward to them being imprisoned for that. You may judge me. I was told that's a safe space. So I'm not even looking forward to them being criminally charged, being put to prison for what they did. But I am grateful of the journey that we have traveled, even though I lose 5 days of my private practice sitting there explaining things. But it's to me, I think it's helpful. The other thing that is happening now, this week as we're talking, the head of health is actually going through the inquest. The lady has avoided going to give evidence and claiming to be sick, but she herself has been, the judge has issued a warrant of arrest. I think even the approach that they are taking puts them at even higher risk of being found responsible. The last part is, which I have not done, I still need to gather strength on, the ones who are healthcare workers, because the head of health was a doctor, the lady is a nurse, they still have to go through the professional bodies for the professional bodies to determine whether they are fit to practice as healthcare workers. I still need Bonga to persuade me again that I must not go and get evidence, because the Health Professions Council did send me big files on what they require from me to deal with that part of adjudication. I think I'll leave it at that and conclude that I think with us, this system of adjudication, we've never tapped on it. We've always, in fact, actually we're scared of it at the time we started, because as a society of psychiatrists, we had never litigated the state for state issues. We have litigated for private sector issues, paying for patients for example, but not for state issues. And so we're taking it consciously, and we also don't have money in case we are found wrong and we are supposed to pay. And in the first case, the one we lost, the lawyers for the state wanted us to pay, what's that money you pay because you are in court for no good reason. What's that fee? Yes, the lawyer, they wanted us to pay for their lawyers for bringing them to court for no good reason. I forgot the legal term for that. Oh, cost order. So they wanted a cost order on us, but the judge said no, we are not doing it for ourselves, we're doing it for the community. I think there's still a lot for us to do for mental health, and I think we still are going to be in court many times. We've got an advantage of a good constitution, fair laws that we can take advantage of. Thank you.